can give you a sheet.
There's one on there.
Oh, you got one? Oh,
You left it there?
Once or twice?
I saw on the sheet there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's just the sign-in sheet.
And not. One thing, sorry. Sorry, thank you.
thank you.
Yes.
He's gonna speak.
Okay, call the meeting to order.
Dale Delkey. Rachel Henderson.
Here.
Mark Hillman.
Here.
Carl Palmer.
Here.
Amy Riddle Swanson.
Here.
Charlie Schneider.
Here.
Angie Skillings. Here. Abe Smith.
Here.
Dominique Stewart.
Okay, we have a quorum. Officially seating Mr. Dalkey, who was appointed last Monday, it seems like we were just here, and took the office the following day on the 16th. So officially welcome to the board, Dale. And I'm sure we'll have lots of good discussions in the next 9 months or so, right? All right, let's move on to Pledge of Allegiance. Back up over here. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amy, I won't forget the mission statement this time. The school district of the Menomonie area, by embracing unique needs and using the strengths and our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. Anyone have anything they'd like to change on the agenda order? Any revisions to the agenda? Nothing? All right. Do you have any recommendations or accommodations? None? Communications. One more time. Anybody, community, want to speak? All right. So moving on to approve the personnel consent agenda.
So moved, sir.
Abe
Second.
and Rachel. Abe made the motion, Rachel seconded to approve the consent, approve the personnel consent agenda. Anything of note?
Just 2 hires, and before the board approves this, I would just like to again thank our building principals and thank our HR director, Samantha White is back there. We are fully staffed in terms of our faculty. There aren't as many school districts that can say that this year. We're very proud of that fact. Really good candidates and looking forward to a great school year. Our new teachers were in last week. Our entire teaching staff will be in starting tomorrow, and we're ready to hit the ground running for the 2022-2023 school year.
Many of them are here. Yeah, I work with schools every day, and it's a big problem out there right now. There's schools with a dozen or more openings still right now, and schools a fourth the size of Menomonie that had as many hires this fall as we've had. It's a big issue, but thank you to all of you for taking care of it here. So, any other discussion?
How are you for parents?
Good. We still have a few to hire. I know there was an interview today. There's a few interviews scheduled for tomorrow, but we're sitting pretty good. That's good.
All right, let's vote. Can we do it electronically, Jenny? No? Okay. Sorry?
Dale Delkey.
Yes, approving the,
Rachel Henderson.
Yes.
Mark Hillman.
Yes.
Carl Palmer.
Yes.
Amy Riddle Swanson.
Yes.
Charlie Schneider.
yes.
Angie Skillings. Yes. Abe Smith.
Yes.
Dominique Stewart.
All right, and on to the action agenda 3A, major goals and activities for the work plan. Motion by Carl, second by Mark. Any discussion, questions? Yeah, Joe?
So the board reviewed the work plan last meeting. This has been an entire summer of work on the strategic plan, reviewing the mission, the vision, the major goals and deliverables, the measurements of the strategic plan. So with all that information through the summer, we developed the work plan, and I think it's ambitious. We talked about this last Monday. There's a lot on there, but I think it's a lot of important work. And I know the principals and directors and I, we already have been hitting the ground running, and we're looking forward to having our staff back because our staff is going to be instrumental in helping us accomplish this plan this year. So we look forward to achieving these goals and reporting to the board along the way.
I assume there's no changes from last week.
There's been no changes.
A thought for the board, one of the items in the final one, pillar 3, reestablish faculty and staff committees for the 2022 school year. Some of those committees do involve board members, and I don't think our current agenda system has a place for kind of giving little reports as those occur. So the work plan for the administration, of course, have a summary at the end of the year. But I think as a board, we might want to make sure our agenda has just a standing entry for any updates from those committees, so that we don't have to kind of do it at the end of the year in a rush and have kind of ongoing updates.
Most of those committees meet quarterly, correct? So I think we can have an agenda item after those committee meetings to have a discussion, a report out, so to speak, about those committee meetings. I think that's a good idea. Anything else? All right, so we have a motion and a second. No more discussion? Vote.
Dale Dumpy,
Yes.
Rachel Henderson,
Yes.
Mark Hillman,
Yes.
Carl Palmer,
Yes.
Amy Riddle Swanson,
Yes.
Charlie Schneider,
Yes.
Angie Skillings,
Yes.
Abe Smith,
Yes.
Dominique Stewart.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. On to discussion items 4A, the community education report.
So today, Mr. Marin, our Director of Community Education and Director of Activities and Athletics for the high school, is here to present the board with the community education report. Mr. Marin, go ahead.
All right, well, thank you. Hello, everybody. My first time presenting to you guys, so it's nice to see you all. So I did the community education report. If you know anything about it, I took over for Gail and former director in January. So it's still kind of new to me, but trying to find some of this data was a little bit of a challenge, but I worked through it and got the most accurate information. Yeah, obviously, looking at the data from the previous full year we had in 2019 and 20, registrations and memberships are down significantly. Meeting with the former director, he explained in the review that it was hard to rebound after COVID. So my goal this year is to really bounce back with memberships and program offerings. Here. Other than that, is there any questions?
Mr. Marin, could you maybe just highlight some of the main activities and offerings that are most popular for people in the community?
So anything with aquatics, mainly laps, swim, the opposite classes are really popular. So that's our top priority. But open rec is for kids and communities. We've had so many kids. You can stop by and open rec, especially in the wintertime. Wintertime is big sometimes, but there's just kids all over the place. And we try to set up different activities for all of them. We will be installing cardio equipment hopefully by the end of this month, beginning of next month. And I'm really going to focus on that and try to offer more stuff in terms of cardio and programs like that. We're going to start a yoga class for this fall, so kind of excited about that.
Yeah, I've been real impressed, like Mr. Marin said, going in there and seeing the number of people using the pool. And certainly we have the swimming programs as part of the school district, but there are a lot of community members that are able to use the pool for a variety of reasons. And then the field house is very, very well used. The number of families that come there just to get some recreation, shoot baskets, play volleyball, things like that. It's a very well used facility, and we're very fortunate to have it in Menomonie. So, in terms of offering any kind of courses, I know that's been pretty much obsolete since the start of the pandemic. If someone's interested in offering a course, they should just reach out to you.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm open to any ideas. We have a lot of different resources that we can do as a church, whether it's cooking classes or any other types of classes. Up for community members. Definitely open for suggestions.
Any questions from board members?
Thank you.
So if a member of the public wants to use the cardio equipment as a for instance, where do I find that information?
On our website, so on the district website, you go to community and then go to field house. That's where it's most, that's where that information.
That's where I would sign up. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
I just echo what Dr. Zanowski said. I personally do use the field house facilities and maybe no. And I just feel so lucky to have that in Menomonie. It's a great resource.
Thank you. And on to the athletic committee report.
Might as well stay here. This was planned out well, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so last year was a great year for Menomonie activities. We had so many different accomplishments. I tried to highlight some of the top ones there. I might have missed something here or there, but I tried to catch them all. In terms of sports, Mr. Olson compiles all that data. Pretty sure you got that recorded. I put that in there. He's been doing that for years. I think that's just an excellent summary of all the different achievements. And then our activity van, FFA, equestrian forensics. I did talk to our deck advisor, and they had 3 kids go to nationals down in Georgia too, so I helped them doing that. So a lot of great achievements, and participation numbers are up over 100. So I mean, that's what we want. We want to participate and be active. So hopefully that continues to increase. From a revenue side, I know it looks a little shocking, but COVID was just really impacted our expenses and drastically. So I tried to lay that out, cost per student on each sport, kind of end up costing. All the money from the total cost, it's all covered by budget. So it includes everything from transportation, meals and lodging, officials, transportation, game workers, event fees, all that is included.
I noticed you mentioned transportation twice. Is that because it's so expensive?
Yes.
Yeah, it's getting very expensive.
Transportation and stuff. And then to find drivers too. The bus company, they did a great job for us.
Just a quick question to clarify, the things that are in the spending analysis at 0, are those things that didn't happen this year?
Spending analysis.
Correct. Are you talking about drop line?
Yeah.
So in 2020, we didn't run a lot of the programs.
Right,
So
got it.
that is exactly what we hope to kind of maybe get, like, for drumline, it's a great example. It'd be great if we can get that program back up and running. So, we're thank you.
Me, following on Rachel's question, one I was confused about, and this was probably just the way it's counted, is the boys track versus girls track. They both ran, literally. But then we have like a per student cost in boys track and not girls track. I think that's just how the cost is broken down somehow, but I was curious.
So that's a very good question. The WI is making us separate that with the way we kind of categorize it now. Just because a lot of bigger schools will send the girls one place and boys another. We don't do that.
So it's just like track as a unit.
Correct.
So it's separated by number of students, but then dollars is.
It's all the same.
Okay.
Same with track.
Any other questions for Mr. Muir tonight? Thanks, Craig.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 4C, review revisions to policy 455, the local wellness policy.
So, Director of Student Services, Tony Kwiski, and our Director of School Nutrition, Michelle Poser, met and worked with some committee members on updating the local wellness policy. This policy by law does have to be reviewed and updated. And you can see in red the suggestions based on the committee discussion and also information that was obtained by Mrs. Colzer and Mrs. Kowalski in terms of some of the legal aspect. The policy does need to be improved to discuss responsibility having to do with the policy. So you can see that, like many other policies, it puts under the superintendent's umbrella for ensuring implementation and compliance. The student, and we also note there that the student services director and director of food and nutrition services will act as co-chairs of the local wellness committee. School meal pattern requirements. It says that school nutrition staff will receive annual training for meeting the requirements of professional standards. That's an important piece to add to the policy. We also added language about school gardens and how those are encouraged and how produce from the gardens will be incorporated into the meals when appropriate. Also talked about communication with families and making sure all families receive information about how to apply for free and reduced meals, information on breakfast and lunch programs, and the district's policy for unpaid meal balances. It should be noted that in the policy, we are calling out that students will be offered a meal from the daily menu regardless of account balance. I know that has gotten some attention in some other schools. We do not make kids go hungry here, even if they do not have money in their balance. We do talk about nutrition promotion and utilize the Wisconsin Team Nutrition Meal Appeal self-assessment to determine ways to improve school meals. I do think that Mrs. Closer and her group here do a terrific job, but we want to continue to do that and implement the techniques that are considered to be best practices. We are noted in this policy that caffeinated beverages will only be allowed for sale at the high school. And then in terms of marketing, schools will restrict food and beverage marketing to only those foods and beverages that meet the nutrition standards as set forth by the USDA's nutrition standards for all foods sold in schools rule. Moving on in the policy to page 4, we needed to include information about physical activity, and we already had all of our physical education requirements. However, our policy that allows for students to substitute and take an additional core area course if they're involved with other school-sponsored sports or physical activities, that needed to be reflected in this policy, so that has been done. Lastly, in terms of parents sending food to schools, we are not necessarily outlawing food being sent home or from homes into school. However, we wanted to clarify that we are recommending that snacks sent from home for celebrations are not homemade, and that ingredient labels are on the product to allow for a safe environment for students with allergies. So we do think there's ways that it can be done safely. We are recommending, however, that packaging and that type of thing can be used when possible. So those are the suggestions. This is a first reading. I guess at this point, we open to any feedback the board members have or any other questions. And this is not up for action tonight. We'll be bringing this back in September to give board members a chance to think about it and formulate any additional questions you might have.
When you talk about drink sizes and whatever, it says pet food milk, does that include chocolate milk as well?
I believe so. I believe there is a fat-free chocolate milk option. Mrs. Closer's not even here.
There is, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you.
Thanks, Tonya.
Question about the committee. Is that one of the staff committees that meets quarterly? Is it part of the staff?
No, this is a separate committee.
Okay.
And the committee invitations are sent to a variety of stakeholders, and I think it's listed in here. It could include the school board member, school administration, student representatives, parent representatives, community health practitioners, post-secondary representative, physical education teachers, and school nurse. There's a whole variety of people that can be invited depending on the different updates being considered.
So how often is it?
I think it's every 3 years, Tony, does that sound right?
In the past, we've had large groups. This past year, it was very small. Many people couldn't attend. We invited, like the pediatrician at Mayo, she could not attend, but people gave feedback. A.T. Gallagher was invited, she could not attend.
So it was a smaller group this year. In the past, it's been more of a larger group. But we try to get feedback from a variety of individuals. So.
And some of it has to do with the changes being considered and involved legal changes.
Yes.
There really, as you can see, there really aren't that many substantial changes at this point. Some years there are more changes to consider. That may require more analysis and feedback. Any other questions tonight?
Move on to 4D, review extracurricular staff contract request.
So this is a standing agenda item. Board members, you can see the list of extracurricular staff members that have been hired. Certainly with many fall sports and activities up and running, there's more activity in this report than in previous months. But we're happy to see a number of people, especially some of our new teachers, involved with some of our activities. And that's one thing we encourage our new teachers during new teacher orientation is to get involved, whether it be coaching something, advising something, maybe selling tickets at events, things like that. We think that's a great way for our new teachers to get to know not only the kids, but also family and community members here in Knoxville.
Any discussion there? All right, hearing none. Move on to items related to next meeting dates. We have them all there, obviously. First day of school, September 1st, board meeting on the 12th. I won't read through all of them, but you want to talk about the board on Wednesday?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, we're done here, and there's a reason why we got a small agenda. We have the annual meeting starting at 6 o'clock. So as soon as we're done, we'll be moving into the tiered lecture hall and getting set up for the annual meeting. Certainly everyone's invited. That starts at 6 o'clock. Board members, thank you to those of you who got back to me. Our opening staff in service on Wednesday morning is going to start with a wellness walk. It starts at 7:15 a.m. And actually we're going to play wellness poker. For every lap that a staff member goes around, they get a card, and the best 5-card poker hand wins the door prize. After that, we have coffee and donuts and just kind of a little bit of a mingling type of time period. I think that's 7:30 to 8 o'clock, Brian. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
At 8 o'clock, we're going to meet here. It's all at the high school Wednesday morning. We're going to meet in the auditorium, and we have a nice little presentation, a welcome back. We also present the Years of Service Awards. So the board members that are joining us Monday morning, they'll be on stage and handing out the Years of Service Awards on behalf of the district. And then we have our keynote speaker, Weston Kishnick, starting at 9 o'clock. He's a nationally renowned speaker, and he has some really good messaging for our staff members as we kick off the year. But Tuesday, tomorrow, teachers will be in their buildings and kind of a building directed day. Wednesday is a district level day, so most of it's going to be here at the high school. And then we have different department meetings and such in the afternoon. And then Thursday back to a district level day. I'm sorry, building level day. And then next week we have the kids coming for check-in on the 31st, and then the official school year starts on September 1st.
Also, as you look at the upcoming board meeting, remember that for the next few months, we're going to be out at the buildings. So don't show up at the ASC on the 12th, go to River Heights. Any other discussion there? Thoughts? Amy, yes.
This is a little ways away, but I think it's late October, at the every regional meeting, every regional board meeting. It's gonna be right here in Menomonie, so, I would like to sign up for that, and I think every board member's might have to do that.
We'll send a message out to all board members. But you're right, it'll be hosted there at Broadway, and that'd be nice to have some attendance for the Wasby regional meeting towards the end of October.
All right, any other discussion? Coming meeting? All right, with that,
We adjourn.
motion by Carl, second by Andy to adjourn.
All right, see you in the tiered lecture hall.
35 minutes.
Fine.
That's right.
Yeah, Uncle Hooky.
Yeah, how you doing?
Maybe across.
Yeah, across the creek.
Just across the.
I'm doing good. How about you?
You got some new building there. How are they fill up?
Okay.
You got some new homes there.
Yeah.
Think they filled up okay?
Oh, I've been selling them, so I don't plan to.
Yeah, okay. I'll sit down. All done, huh?
Yeah. Well, I'm not done, but we're going on.
You got more to build?
Yeah.
How many?
8 more sets.
So then we'll have to be on the other side of the road?
No, it's the other side of the road. Yep.
So we will.
We were supposed to improve that quick a year or two ago, but I suppose COVID and all that.
Tell you what. I don't even see it on the radar right now.
Oh, you don't?
And I've been, we've got some other higher priorities, like right now they're working on upper part of Gilbert, above,
Going up the hill?
and it seems like
You only get so much done at a time.
really want to do something downstream from me, but it's not on the radar either.
It's not. Oh, okay.
They only got one team, you see, they go all the way over to Mississippi River, like they're working on the Trim Valley, south of River Falls.
Yeah, okay.
So they have big area.
Big area, we try to get as much done as they can.
But if you have a chance, get some input, and if you're anxious, boy, that would be a beautiful stretch to do.
Now Quinn is sold here. Didn't Quinn sell?
Did they? She told me she was
Deb Ken's wife.
really.
So that, because they kind of were a holdout there. So maybe they could get that, then it would be the whole stretch.
She was a little reluctant to do that before she sold. She told me.
They were always reluctant.
Well, that is, have they moved? She moved?
Yeah. Oh, he moved to Glenwood.
So Middlesex,
I saw a motorcycle there today, so I'm not sure where the transaction
just
is
Sue.
at. Huh?
Does she have anybody else with her? Just her. Just her. We got new neighbors next to me too, you know, in Erickson's house.
Oh, you do?
You know Dick Erickson's?
Yeah. He moved?
They built out by Jake's and near Cater, not on the way.
Okay.
And so, new people from Twin Cities, South St. Paul, nice folks, older grandkids and kids in Glenwood, which is why
Yeah, okay, if you want to be down close to the family.
seemed all nice.
Good.
Boy, met up for 10 minutes.
How are you kids doing?
Wonderful.
Good. And you? Way over? Not way over? Oh, there. I thought it was still in that great big room going on there, but nothing in there. And it was in a different building, you know?
Somebody said they were going to use a bathroom when we were walking down the hallway.
How are you doing? If I need to do something really important,
This wasn't too bad of a walk for you, was it?
Oh, you got him one. What a nice guy.
I'm gonna get him one that way.
I'd like to call the annual meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the election of the chairperson of the meeting. Any nominations for chairperson of the meeting?
Nominate Charlie Schneider.
Second?
Okay. Any other nominations?
Angie.
I'm sorry, Angie?
Yep.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, so we have Charlie Schneider and Angie Skillings nominated to be the chair. We don't have the tellers appointed yet, just a raise hand. Okay, can we do a, raise your hand for Angie Skillings, please. 6, 7, I got 10. Okay, and raise your hand for Charlie Schneider, please. Okay. So, now to appoint the parliamentarian and the tellers. I would like to nominate Rachel Henderson to be the parliamentarian, and Sam Hoyt and Tonya to be the tellers. And now a recognition of current and former board members. We have David Steyer in the back, and Margaret Bryce here in the middle. I believe that's it for former board members. If I missed someone, please tell me. I think that's it. Okay, and then we have our current board members. Over in the corner, Carl Palmer, Angie Skillings down here in the front, Mark Hillman, Abe Smith, Rachel Henderson, Dominique Stewart, and Amy Swanson. And our newest board member, Dale Dahl. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're good. Okay, and we, Dave, would you come down? Huh? Good. I don't have to yell. I probably will anyway. So, the board would like to recognize David Steyer for his recognition and service to the children in Wisconsin Public Schools, 2013 to 2022. This is actually from the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. And this is from the school district, and an activity pass as well in there, so you can get into all the activities for free. Thank you. Okay, so on to the minutes of the last annual meeting. The minutes are on page 4 in your book. So we would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
They don't need to be approved, just review.
Not approve at all. Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments on the minutes while we're there? All right. And with that, a presentation of the treasurer's report and audit summary. That is in the book as well on pages 6. Starting at page 6. Leo will take over from here on that.
So I'm going to read off the treasurer's report. I know it's kind of long, a lot of numbers, but that's part of the requirement of the annual meeting. So I'm just going to start off at the top, the summary of transactions from the general fund. The general fund revenues for 21-22 were $41,702,711.07, and expenditures totaled $41,630,049.71, for a net difference of $72,661.36. Summary of transactions. This includes all the funds from the general fund all the way up to the package fund. The total revenues, all funds for 21-22 total $59,159,900. $1,837,555.10. The total expenditures for all funds for 21-22 were $56,442,706.20. The operational cash summary, this includes the general fund, special education fund, food service fund, and community service fund. The beginning balance for July 1st, 2021 for cash and investments was $12,236,012.51, and the ending balance, June 30th, 2022, was $16,155,517.56. Due from other governments, the beginning balance was $402,327.91. The ending balance for June 30th, 22 was $1,524,674.15. And taxes receivable was $5,599,714.77. And the ending balance June 30th, 22 was $5,126,121.96. And there was no short-term borrowing that was required for cash flow purposes. The debt retirement summary, referendum long-term summary, in 21-22, the payments of the referendum long-term notes and bonds totaled $3,020,000 on the principal and $631,339 on the interest. Long-term notes and bonds indebtedness as of June 30th, 22 totaled $29,128,223, which consisted of $25,204,000 in principal and $3,924,223 in interest. The benefit trust summary, the ending balance in the benefit trust fund as of June 30th, 2022 was $6,770,875.19. Earnings on investments in 21-22 totaled $684.73. Disbursements in 21-22 totaled $982,388.95, and American United Life is the trust administrator. The levy for school tax. The tax rates are tentative and subject to review later in October. Approval is requested for a tentative tax levy of $12,640,839 for operations, $3,756,560 for debt service, and $300,000 for community service, for a total levy of $16,697,399.
Okay, so we would entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report and audit summary. So we did last year. I'm sorry, I heard someone move. Brian? And a second?
Seconded.
It says in here it's not necessary for the electors to vote on these items.
It does not need to be approved.
Okay. Then we will, I guess, present the budget.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Zadowski. I'm the district administrator for the school district of the Menomonie area. Thank you for being here tonight to attend the annual meeting. I know Charlie already introduced the current board members, but they are listed up on the screen. We have 9 school board members that govern the district. The mission statement for the school district of the Menomonie area reads that by embracing the unique needs and using the strengths of our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. Tonight, myself and Leah Theater, the Director of Business Services, will be presenting information about the 2022-2023 school district budget. A little bit of background before we get into the budget numbers. You can see our demographics. Over 3,200 students, district administrator, assistant superintendent, directors, principals, assistant principals, teachers, paraeducators, and support staff members. There are 7 different schools in the SBMA, along with the Administrative Service Center and the Bjornsson Environmental Center. We had a lot to celebrate from 2021-2022. All schools in the district met or exceeded the expectations on the 2021 State Accountability Report Cards. All of our schools were open for in-person learning during the Delta and Omicron waves of the COVID-19 pandemic. Both in-person and virtual learning opportunities were available for all families. Expanded staffing levels were continued to provide additional support during the pandemic. We also continued with expanded use of technology, which was especially key for supporting learning during quarantine. We offered students a full slate of activities, clubs, and athletics, provided free meals throughout the district, and offered a robust summer school program this past summer, the summer of 2022. With work from our energy committee and our energy manager for the school district, we reduced our energy use by 17%. Looking forward to this school year, 2022-2023, we have a very ambitious work plan to continue our work towards everything that's lined up in the SBMA strategic plan. We have areas of college, career, and life-ready graduates, student social and emotional wellness, our talented workforce, parent and community partnerships, and facilities and operations. Tonight, the board approved the work plan, and it will be available on the district website tomorrow. Also this year, we will continue our recovery from the pandemic, and one of our main focuses will be building trusting relationships with students. As you've seen, many people in our society and many of our children have had a rough go of it with the pandemic. We will be focusing with our staff to ensure that every single student in our school district has an adult in the school district that they can trust. We are also dealing with staffing shortages across the country. I'm sure if you go around town, you'll see help wanted signs and people looking for workers all over the place. Schools are no exception. Today in our earlier meeting, we celebrated the fact that we have 100% of our teachers now employed and ready for the school year. Our new teachers started last week, and the rest of our faculty will be joining us tomorrow for back to school in-service. A couple major projects that we have going on in the school district. We are in the middle of installing a solar array at Menomonie Middle School. You can see the infrastructure that's set up. There is some wiring yet to be completed. And right now, we are undergoing construction for phase 3 of the Menomonie High School Sports Complex. So to talk about the budget numbers, I'll bring up here Director of Business Services, Leah Theater.
Okay, I'm going to go over the 22-23 budget, and first of all, we're going to start out with what is a budget, and that is an estimate often itemized of expected income and expenses for a given period of time in the future. The total budget will change in October. The 22-23 budget will change in October when the board sets the levy. The total budget includes several major funding categories. Those categories are broken down on page 7 in the booklet. It breaks down all the different operations from food service, from special education, etc. The total budget includes hundreds of line items, and the total budget for the 22-23 school year is expected to be approximately $63.18 million. A little bit about Wisconsin school finance. Wisconsin state statute limits how much revenue can be raised through operational tax levy and general state aids. The general state aids increased 0.9% in 21-22. July 1st estimate is projected to increase 10.1% in 22-23, and that's based on budgeted expenditures. So that increase actually will change once the actual expenditures get reported to DPI this fall. Increased reimbursement for eligible special education costs is expected to be 30% in 2023, but that is based on cost projections. And the reimbursement for high-cost special education costs is estimated at 40% in 22-23. The per pupil aid is a categorical aid, and that amount is set in state statute. We'll receive $742 in per pupil aid in 22-23 and each year thereafter. And then revenue limit per pupil adjustment is $0 per member in 22-23 and each year thereafter.
Yeah, Leah, can you hold on for a second?
Sure.
I'm going to chime in just on a few of these slides, but if you notice towards the top where it talks about general state aid, we are anticipating a significant increase in our state aid. The challenge for our school district, however, is that state aid really is not very spendable. And that's because of the last line there, where the revenue limit is capped, and there's no new revenue limit expense allowed. So even though state aid is going up, that doesn't mean the district's going to have more funding to be able to expend on our programs.
The Wisconsin Parental School Choice Program and the Special Needs Scholarship Program impact on our district. In 21-22, we had one private school participate in both of those programs for 39.8 FTE students, which totaled $301,763. The SNSP impact, there was 6.6 FTE students, and that totaled $65,886. We're estimating the 22-23, those programs impact on SDMA. We have two private schools participating in the WPCP program for the coming school year. So we've estimated approximately 46 FTE students for an impact of approximately $386,354. And then one private school is participating in the SNSP program. We've estimated 8 FTE students for an impact of $104,608. Now, the actuals, these numbers will be based on actuals, and DPI will release that count in October on the 15th. Property values for our school district, we have,
Anyone's just asking if we could ask questions at any time.
Well, it's just some of the information last, like some of the school districts are going where, if they're in a private school, the tax money that would normally go into the district would go to that school because they're not receiving services. And when you're using that FTE, I'm wondering what it stands for.
well, that's the full-time equivalency of students. Not all students are counted as one. There could be 4K students that are counted as a 0.6 FTE.
Did that answer your question?
Well, I think some of these things are a little more complicated than I'm understanding.
Sure.
So
not familiar, I should have educated myself more.
That's okay, but you are correct. There's a mechanism in place, the way that the finance works with the private school vouchers. And we could meet after the meeting or separately to go through that in detail, but it does impact the district tax levy.
Yep. Property values for our school district. You'll see we have a 5-year history and the 22-23 estimate. For budgeting purposes, the equalized values of property is assumed to remain unchanged for 22-23. The values are certified in October, so we don't have that estimate prior to that time. Levy analysis, if we take a look at the final 21-22 and compare that to the preliminary budget, in the general fund, we're showing a change, a decrease in the levy of $367,664, and then debt service, an increase of $96,200, and then community service, we are not projecting an increase on the levy for this school year, so that is remaining at 0. So the total levy is decreasing $271,464, or 1.60%. Tax rate history, the estimated mill rate is projected to be 7.58. That is a decrease over last year of 13 cents. And it's likely to decrease based on state aid certification and property values. We don't have those estimates yet. Those will come out again in the fall. So when we build this budget, we base it on estimates in the spring when we build the budget. Major budget adjustments, we had salary increases at 4.7%. plus steps for those employment groups that received their steps. So it totaled approximately 6.98%. The budget was built with health insurance increase of 3%. Our plan year renews on January 1st. Right now, we're not projecting an increase, but we did build this budget with the possibility that it might increase at 3%. The revenue cap was set at 0, like I mentioned before, and then we do have the ESSER 3 grant. It was available last year. We did not expend those funds, so that grant amount was added into the budget. And then this year we're starting phase 3 of the sports complex. We're replacing the Oak Lawn fire system, and then, like Joe had mentioned, the solar array project has started. Some reductions, the ESSER 1 grant has been finished. We've expended all of those funds, so that grant is done. And then we did have a decrease on the approved staffing plan. The COVID-19 budget impact, like I had mentioned, we have the ESSER 2 and 3 grants. The carryover for ESSER 2 for 22-23 is $729,651, and the estimated allocation for ESSER 3 is $3,875,698. We also have they call it an ARP homeless children's grant program, and that carryover for 22-23 is expected to be approximately $3,159.58. And all these numbers are based on, except for ESSER 3, these numbers are based on unaudited numbers. Some allowable uses for the ESSER funds is preparedness in response to COVID-19, learning loss, outreach and services to special populations, addressing long-term closures, educational technology, mental health supports, after school and summer activities, and continued staff employment. The operating budget of revenue and expenses, again, if we compare the unaudited actuals of last year to our preliminary budget for this year, the revenues has a change of $31,408, or negative 0.08%. Expenditures, $2,718,311, or an increase of 6.55%. Now, that would be a deficit in the preliminary budget, but we did not have all of the ESSER grant monies budgeted yet, so the total of those grants will more than cover the projected deficit, and as we go into the fall, we'll update that budget accordingly.
question. So on your chart, it shows 9% right there. So of that 9% that it's showing, the 7 and the 2 for grants, that is not including the ESSER funds?
A portion has been budgeted, but not the entire amount.
Okay.
So where does the revenue come from? We have a breakdown of the categories. 59% is the largest category, and that comes from state aid and per pupil aid. The second highest amount at 30% is the local property taxes, and then the third highest is at 7% is federal grants. Where does the money go? The vast majority is spent on salaries and benefits, and that's at 74%. The second highest is 12% for purchase services, and then the third highest category at 5% is for transportation. Fund 10, or our operational fund, the fund balance history, you'll see we have a 5-year history there. The blue portion on this chart is the unassigned fund balance, and the red portion is assigned. The assigned portion in red is designated assigned for our self-funded health insurance plan. So that's what that red bar on the chart is depicting. And you'll see we've increased our fund balance over the past 5 years. This year, it doesn't look like much of a change, but it did go up slightly. And again, that's unaudited, so that is subject to change yet. The Capital Improvement Fund 46, there was a referendum in 2013 that allowed the school district to update the facilities. At that time, the school district, the board approved a 30-year capital maintenance plan to keep those facilities up and establish the Fund 46 to save for projected capital maintenance, capital improvement needs. The fund balance at the end of 21-22 was $7,810,784.07, and we're anticipating to contribute $810,000 in the 22-23 school year. Now, this shows a pretty significant fund balance for 22-23. However, we are planning on spending some of those funds. We don't have all the estimates in yet on costs, and so it's not reflected here. But this fall, we should have more of that information, and then at our mid-year budget hearing, we'll give an update on what the actual fund balance is projected to be. Post-employment benefits, in addition to the SEMA employees' state retirement, the school district provides a local post-employment benefit to most of our full-time employees. We have not made any changes to our post-employment benefits in quite a few years. The school district made some of those difficult changes I don't know, maybe 7-8 years ago to reduce the OPEB debt and move from a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. And so the savings from the new hires should be enough to fund the benefits accrued by SCMA retirees. These are the numbers that for our other post-employment benefits, those are our liabilities in the fund, but it's only updated through July 1st of 2021. We are scheduled to have a complete actuarial study done this year, so the end of 22, so June 30th, 22. That report is not out yet. That will be available probably mid-October, and which at that time will update this. But there's no additional contribution to Fund 73 planned in 22-23. And then our Community Service Fund. The Community Service Fund provides an additional opportunity for residents in the school district. And some of the items that fall under Fund 80 are community education offerings, middle school age activities, Boys and Girls Club, And then we also have a community youth services officer. Revenues for Fund 80 is generated from a tax levy outside of the revenue limit, as well as participation fees. The levy for Fund 80 makes up approximately 2% of the overall levy, and the Fund 80 tax levy is projected to remain the same for 22-23. At the end of the 21-22 school year, we did have a deficit spend of $30,240.92, again, unaudited. But the Fund 80 has a pretty healthy fund balance, and so it's approximately $147,000. And so we're not recommending at this time increasing the Fund 80 levy, but rather if we have a deficit, to use up some of the fund balance that's accrued over the years. And then this just shows you a history of the tax levy over the past 5 years. And you can see it's kind of gone up and down a little bit, and now, like I say, we're not projecting any type of increase because we're going to utilize fund balance if necessary. Questions or comments?
We'll switch places.
Sure.
I know we already had one question, but now would be a great time if other people have questions or comments on the budget. Margaret?
Yeah, could you go back to the 146 screen? Okay, because in our book here, it has for Fund 40 series. Oh, I'm just looking at revenue. The fund balance. Well, the fund balance there shows less than 5 million in here.
I can tell you that what you're seeing here, I think Leah mentioned it, it does not have the expense side of the different projects and programs that will be worked on for this year's school budget. We know there's going to be expenses, but that's not reflected in this graph here. It'd be better reflected in your booklet. Other questions or comments? Yes?
Can you give a little more detail on the district plans for the ESSER 3 funds?
Yes, I can tell you that ESSER 3 funds are going to be how we operate our schools, especially this year. When you look at the previous slides, there was a $0 increase in the revenue limit, and with that being said, there's really no, I'm generalizing here, but no new revenue for schools. And what the state legislature essentially decided was that schools would use the ESSER funding to continue programming. We're in a good position in Menomonie where we didn't expend our ESSER funds. Some schools, they did major projects and expended those funds rather rapidly. We were cautious, and I'm glad that we were, because with the funding that we have, we're in a good spot to continue with all of our programming. Now, we are concerned with the next biennial budget, and we'll have to see what happens there, but we are in a good position for this next school year for sure. Alex?
So, if I understand correctly, which is very possible that I do not, the tax levy that is being asked for now is less this year, despite the overall budget being a bit higher, because the state is increasing its aid. Is that an appropriate kind of overall, Michelle?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's almost like a three-legged stool a little bit. If the revenue limit is frozen and state aid goes up, the tax levy will go down. In an ordinary situation, that would probably require a reduction in our budget, but because of the ESSER money, the COVID funds, we're able to continue with our programming despite the higher costs. Other questions? Gabe?
With health insurance, since it's self-funded, the increases there historically, have they been aimed at matching a certain balance or a growth rate, or how do you, when you make recommendations about that budget, how do you target them?
Well, board policy calls for having up to 2 months of the average claims for the past year in the fund balance. We will say though that our health insurance costs, we're seeing trends that are definitely moving upward. We've done a really nice job with our health insurance, and for that reason we haven't had to raise our premiums in over 5 years. However, if the current trend continues, then we will have to make a change either in our plan design or with how it's being funded. Yes?
Of the salaries and benefits, what percentage is currently used for health insurance?
I would have to break that down, I don't have that number.
What did he ask?
The question was, of the salary and benefits number on the pie chart, what percentage of that is health insurance? That's certainly something that we could get if you'd like to contact the business office. Margaret?
Let me cross out 2 more things. As you went through this, I was interested in, there's a solar panel at the middle school.
Yes.
And the second thing, was a homeless child grant of a little over $3,000, I guess. I wonder how percent that money.
So the question about the solar panels, I don't know if you've driven over there, but if you go over there, you can see the panels themselves are all erected, and it looks, I think, real nice. Our hope is that we're going to be able to reduce the cost of energy through those solar panel projects, and I think our energy manager did a really nice job. When you look at the payback on that system, I believe it's right around 8 years, 8 to 9 years, whereas the expected life of those solar panels is probably 20 to 25 years. So I would anticipate that that project would pay for itself more than once. In terms of your question about the homeless grant, we do have situations where students are deemed to be homeless, and we are obligated, the McKinney-Vento Act, I believe, Tonya, we're obligated to provide certain services, and that's one area where those dollars could be used for. I know we just recently had a situation where we were sharing some expenses with a neighboring school district based on a homeless student. Transportation.
That's sort of sad.
Yeah. Other questions about the budget? Yes.
Good question. As you think about the long-term horizon, think about the tax levy, the properties, state funds, things like ESSER funds. When we look at 5 years down the road and we're looking back on a 5-year trending history, do you see any risk to reducing the tax levy this year, looking back, because the ESSER funds will have long since been forgotten as part of the state funding revenue cycle? And inversely, does that cause any risk for us on the practical property side, for there not to be some suppression this year given the ESSER fund availability to be able to recognize that 4 or 5 years down the road, since that will again be a kind of a lost piece of history?
If I'm interpreting you correctly, you're wondering if there's going to be a fiscal cliff?
Well, I'm actually thinking of this meeting in 5 years,
Yeah.
and looking back, trying to sort of build our case for a levy that year, looking back in time. Sort of stability is always feels good to the property owners, right? But there are times where we have other funds that come in, and maybe state funds are maintained stable, ESSER funds come in. Those are what we're using this year to sort of offset ourselves. Had we not had that, we probably would have been looking for a tax levy increase, right? Potentially to cover the deficit in the operating budget. But in 5 years, we look back and we forget that that was there. We just see tax levy stability, and we lose sight of the ESSER funds as part of revenue in a meeting like this. I think at a monthly meeting in the details, you probably see it and you feel it. But in a meeting like this, it gets lost. So I'm wondering if there's any risk to being stable this year versus increasing or decreasing in light of that fact. Just thinking of the future of it.
Yeah, I think mill rate stability is something that we try to consider when we're building our budgets. We do not have as much flexibility as what one might think. Because of the revenue cap, we're not able to just generate additional revenue. You'll see a number of school districts across the state have gone to referendum. I know there's been a lot of coverage of Eau Claire, not only at the school level, but also at the city level of going to referendum. We've tried to plan ahead very well in Menomonie. The Capital Improvement Fund would be a great example. Also with what we've done with our Post-Employment Benefit Trust, I think we've put ourselves in a position where we should have more ability to deal with fluctuations in school funding. But the fact of the matter is that there's not a whole lot we can do with the levy to make a significant impact. So I think what we really need to keep our eye on is what happens in Madison for the next biennium, because depending on how the state legislature decides to fund schools, that could have a significant impact, one, on whether or not we have enough funding, where we would maybe have to look at a referendum, and then two, depending on how those dollars come in, it could impact the levy. You'll notice in the mill rate graph, the mill rate has consistently gone down and down and down. That's a function of how the schools have been funded. To answer your question, 5 years in the future is very difficult, because I do think that we're going to probably see more change, and we have seen more change in how schools are funded in the past 4 years. I think this is my 17th year as a superintendent. The past 3 or 4 years have been way more change than what I saw in the first decade of being a superintendent. So I wish I had a better answer for that. Other than that, we try to keep it in mind, and we try to balance our mill rate the best we can.
That's good. Yeah, I think it's helpful to always be sure, as you tell the story every year, you keep track of those exceptions, because sometimes they get lost.
Yep.
And an important part of the story that fits in with the tax levy that property owners really get focused on, because it's what they can control. And so we're having to have an influence on. So I think as you tell the story, make sure that those special cases are tracked and recognized.
I appreciate that, and with that being said, it's probably worth mentioning in the valuation chart. You can see that right now we don't have an increased valuation projected. We are seeing some preliminary numbers that make us think that property value has gone, and I think we all think it probably has gone up. But until we get the report from the state, we don't know what that number is. But there also are reassessments that really can impact individual homeowners. What we're presenting tonight in terms of tax levy and mill rate, that's a general statement across the entire district. I know personally, our personal taxes, property taxes changed significantly through reassessments. And so each individual tax situation is going to be different. But what we're presenting tonight shows a general picture of the district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, hi Joyce.
What is actually our relationship to whatever kind of vote here we're going to do on the tax levy? So like, let's say that we voted no, like, what would happen?
When the revenue limits were put into statute, that essentially gave school boards the authority to set the budget and the levy, and that has to be done at the end of October. So for the most part, legally, regardless of what happens tonight, the board is a deciding body in terms of setting the levy and the district budget. However, in my past experiences, school board members have been very cognizant of the wishes of taxpayers. We do need a budget though to begin school, and end of October is well into our first semester. So the vote tonight, taxpayers authorizing a budget and a levy, make it possible for us to make those expenditures in alignment with the community.
So it's advisory.
I think that's probably the best way to say it, advisory.
Just to follow up, I don't know if it's the appropriate time, maybe you're still talking finances, but is enrollment part of another piece of the report, or can I ask a general question on
Enrollment?
Yeah.
Yes, we saw some pretty significant enrollment fluctuation with the pandemic, and if you turn in your, and I also want to point out, Leah mentioned the mid-year budget hearing in January. In January, we actually have real numbers. We don't count enrollment until the third Friday of September. So everything we're giving you based on projections. If you want to really get details, come to the January mid-year budget hearing, and we can actually share the actual numbers. But on page 19 of the annual meeting booklet, you can see what enrollment has been the past 5 years, and you can see there's a real dip there in 2020, 2021. We did rebound very nicely in 21-22. And then if you look to the graph in the middle of the page, you can see our enrollment projections for the next 5 years. And even though we're probably looking at a slight decrease based on these projections, our enrollment is pretty stable, especially compared to other schools in northern Wisconsin.
So is that second chart, the about like the green in the middle, is that basically just demographics?
It's basically casting forward our current class sizes and then making an educated guess on the class sizes coming forward. I will say that preliminary numbers for our 4-year-old kindergarten class this year are lower than what we have anticipated. So we're going to be very interested to see what the third Friday of September count comes in with. But I can also tell you that we make adjustments as needed. One of our elementary schools in town ended up having a real low grade level. So instead of having 3 sections this coming year, we're going to have 2 sections at that elementary school. And some of that has to do with balancing between the different schools in town. We try not to change the elementary borders for assigning which students go to which school. However, we have done that in the past, and that may be something we have to look at in the future. But the general numbers are remaining pretty good, remaining pretty stable, I should say.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Anything else? Well, thank you. Really appreciate the interest. If you do have specific questions that weren't answered tonight, by all means, please email me or come and stop into the district office. We would love to get you the information you might be looking for. And with that being said, Charlie, we'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, with that, we'll entertain a motion as worded on your agenda, number 9, adoption of the tax levy for general debt service and community service fund.
I'll second that.
Moved by Brian, I'm sorry, second by Angie. Just do a raise of hands.
Unless there's an objection.
Anyone object to just doing a raise of hands on this, or would you like to do a paper ballot? Hearing no objections, we'll just do a raise of hands. All those in favor? And opposed? Okay, motion passes. And now, excuse me, the second resolution authorizing the compensation for board members, listed on number 10 on your agenda. Entertain a motion there. Tonya?
Second.
And a second by Sam. Should we just do a hand on that as well? Or any discussion, first of all? All right. Just do all those in favor? And opposed? Motion passes as well. And now, Resolution C to authorize the reimbursement of travel expenses for board members. Entertain a motion on that. Margaret? And a second. Alex? So we have a motion and a second to authorize the reimbursement of travel expenses. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? And that motion passes. Other new business. Excuse me. Before we start other new business, I would like to recognize Mr. Moses, who walked in, snuck in there.
I was hoping to go unnoticed, sir. I'm just sitting back here taking notes.
Go on.
I was bored because I met Mr. Stayer on my way in here.
So we have a certificate of commendation from WASB for Clint for his many years of service on the board, and then also a gift from the district as well.
In full disclosure, this is not a legislative bribe for the budget sector.
So does anyone have any other new business that may come before the board? Anything? One last ask. Anything that may come before the board? Margaret? We have a motion to adjourn. We have a second. We stand adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.